Hi, I'm Brianna and I'm here to tell you why prostitutes should be legal.
Hi, my name is Alexa, and I'm here to speak about why we should not legalize prostitution.
The earliest dates of prostitution go back to old Asian times.
Prostitution has come a long way, but do you really know how it all started?
The religious practice actually started prostitution trade. Women would be in service for men and they would pay them to be in the temple, and for return they would get women's bodies.
Ancient Mesopotamia worshipped the goddess Ishtar, who was the goddess of love and war, in which she would remain a goddess throughout the Mesopotamian, Babylonian, and Assyrian Empire. Ishtar was born to be a maiden in the mornings and to be a whore at night.
The sex trade also involved temples, customs, markets, and even laws.
Fast forward to modern day in North America. Prostitution has been legalized in many states all over the country and all over the world. So, should prostitution really be legalized overall?
Prostitutes are people too. So, we should tax them. And what I mean by we should tax them is make it legal so then we can regulate the taxes, which would be beneficial. Also, we can regulate the age so then it's not 15-year-olds in prostitution. Also, that would lead to a decrease in STDs, HIVs, and disease spreads, and we can have less child trafficking and maybe even end it. Also, there would be a decrease in women harassment, sexual violence, and rape.
According to Melissa Farley, a PhD research and clinical psychologist and the founder of the Prostitution Research and Education website, stated in her 2016 article basically how prostitution or any existence of prostitution is society's betrayal to women. And she kind of goes on to explain how women tend to feel vulnerable because of their sex, their ethnicity, their poverty, and sometimes their history of abuse and neglect. And basically how prostitution is sexual harassment, sexual exploitation, and is torture in general, and how it's not okay for us to be accepting of this or to even think about it, or just to think about legalizing it, for one thing. She says that women in prostitution face a statistical probability of weekly rape, like domestic violence taken to the extreme. So it's just the thought of us women, being tortured every single week, and for people to not really fully understand the background of what happens to women in this industry. And people think of the money and the business aspect of it, but really aren't thinking about the emotional support that women may need. And she kind of goes on to explain how the government just really wants to legalize it because of money, to gain money for our economy, and it's just the government basically being selfish.
Legalizing prostitution can save many precious resources for cops, officers, and detectives. For one, a Harvard law professor claimed that they wiretapped 5,000 phone conversations and intercepted 6,000 emails that had to do with prostitution. And they could have been using that for maybe terrorists and, some other stuff.
Now, for a little story, Rachel Morin, who is the co-founder of Survivors Prostitution Abuse Calling for Enlightenment, also known as SPACE, went ahead and wrote about a story of hers, how she entered the sex trade, and as she quote, as most women do, at the age of 15. Being a young, naive girl, she didn't really know what she was getting herself into. She kind of wanted it for the money, and as well as she met a young man who brought up the conversation to her, saying that she's in high demand since she is quote unquote fresh meat, and of course men would be willing to buy her for sex. And she goes on to explain her story, and that she was in the industry for 7 years, continuously being bought and sold for sex. On the streets, sometimes she would have 10 sessions in one night. And she kind of explained how difficult it was for her, that by the time she was in her later teens, she was fully on cocaine to numb herself because of the pain. So just imagine continuously doing toxic drugs that aren't really helping you at all to numb the emotions that you're going through this, especially starting at a young age.